One other little job we had for a while, or I had for a while, was escorting the provincial government, a fellow that went around to the departments and picked up their cash every day in a little red Nash Rambler, if I remember right. And we drove around this city, hit department buildings, drop that off, pick up their deposit, and take $3 or $4 million to the bank in a little Nash Rambler. Nowadays you use different means, but that was one of the jobs we had.
Did that ever concern you?
I was too young to be concerned about it. That bag was so heavy nobody could carry the damn thing anyways, get away.
Gerson Hill was K Division headquarters. Half of the inside, you have to go through this gate, and inside what used to be a parade square. They converted that into a parking stalls for the members, the active members working at headquarters. So off to the west was the administrative side and the operational side of K Division headquarters. To the left was the barracks and the cafeteria, and we had cells in there as well. So that's where a single guy stayed.
Anyways, we're only allowed so many kilometers or miles in those days per shift. Well, if you go from Gerson Hill to the east city limits and back, you used up your mileage. So you just go out and sit and watch stop signs for a while, and then when it got dark, in those days they had a night speed limit. So that's when it got more interesting because everything dropped by 10 miles an hour. And you had to wash your car every time you came in. That was a must. So you'd sit for an hour and a half in a lineup at the post garage to wash your car so the next person could take it out and get it dirty.
I actually walked into the detachment at Williams Lake, BC and applied for the force. I remember the corporal at the time there said, are you nuts, type of thing. It wasn't an encouraging welcome, like, are you sure you know what you're doing? And the first thing they actually did back then is that you had to be 5'8". So the first thing they did is put you against the wall and made sure you were tall enough. If you weren't 5'8", they weren't interested in talking to you.
I was in the office with one of the other constables when a fellow came in, all in a panic. He said, "I've lost my wife. I stopped on the highway down at the Columbia ice fields because she wanted to get into the back of, he was driving a truck with a camper on the back. She wanted to go into the back to sleep. She was tired." This was quite late in the evening. And he stopped. He said, "I stopped on the side of the road. Down there, it's pitch black. It's cold, even in the summer." And he said, I heard the door of the camper slam. I presume she was in there, and I've gotten into town here and she's not there." Well, what had happened was she opened the door to get in the camper and then decided to squat down on the side of the road and relieve herself. And a gust of wind came and slammed the door of the camper, which he heard, and he drove away. And if you can picture her squatting there, watching the taillights disappear down the highway, that would bring a smile to your face. But he was not happy. And he said he didn't know this was what had happened. He just thought she was in there. So we jumped in the car, and before we got back down to the ice field, someone had picked her up and brought her to town. It was not a happy reunion.
But on the weekends, one of the curious things I remember is that the ready room was only open from Monday to Friday, and in the evenings. But on the weekends, if a detachment called in and needed a registered owner of a motor vehicle with a license plate, we had to physically go down to a building near the legislative building in Edmonton, go in there because it was locked up for the weekend, and go down and look through the index cards. License plates were registered on an index card to look up the registered owner of that vehicle, then come back and ready them and say, well, this is the registered. So we always made sure, how important is this that you knew this registered owner on the weekend? Could it wait till Monday? If not, we had to go down and physically do that.
One of the interesting things that happened there was that the four of us going early were able to pick our own accommodation. So I was able to pick a single family dwelling, which was in the officers' part of the base. right across the street from the commanding officer's home. The padre said, how will you like living in the haunted house? And my wife's eyes got a little bit bigger, and so Inspector Mortimer gave me 32 men in a troop, and they moved our furniture down the street. I think the ironic part of my whole story is that as soon as we moved out of the haunted house, the first family to move into it was the Flight Lieutenant Padre, who moved his family into it. And I think that he told us the haunted house story so he could get that house for himself.
We, one particular was called Janvier. There was no road to Janvier. It's about, I believe, about 100 miles southeast of McMurray. The railroad went through there, and when I first went there, the members would actually get off the train there and spend a couple of days there when the train came through. When I was there, we actually had to go patrol that area, and we did it by horseback. Hard to believe, but it was true. We actually hired a local bush pilot. He would fly us in to land us on the lake in the summertime, drop us off, and said, I'll pick you up in 2 days. And so the local Aboriginal people would come down with the wagon and buggy, and then they'd take us to their own place, and we'd rent a couple horses from them, and we did our patrols by horseback. And we like to talk about it because we took pictures of it, we still got pictures of it as such, and we stayed at a place called, there was a trading post there run by a fellow who owned a store, and I think his wife was a health nurse, I believe, and they put us up for the 2 nights we were there, and then 2 days later we had to go back to the lake, and sure enough the bush pilot came in and picked us up.